address that because a lot of people, like, especially a conservative talking point, is that the biggest killer of humans is abortions. And when I sit there and I look at the root cause of abortions, oh wait, that's want a government at all. I don't see the benefit. Uh, I'll go down.
I don't
Watch yourself.
hold
I
on,
just want to go down some of this because
Art. I don't know. Chad might give you a run for your money because me and Jeff are also anarchists, but we will.
you already
Yeah.
move fast. Where when somebody says the word party, I'm running in the next direction. So you guys are already like like conservatives are liberals to me. Like, come on, man. Like they're back on. I could just put cameras everywhere, give everybody a strap, and probably have better double digit on scene. Like, you know what I mean? And probably save some money. So it's just so
Right.
like, and that's just that. Open education. India's already using it. The fact that we're not using it and that we're still paying anything for our school systems, just yeah, that's just shocking to me too as well. But like, it, what the problem is, I honestly think that we don't root the problem. We root the problem into everything but poverty. Like there's all these other problems, like abortion, for example. Even though 3/4 of the abortions are due to poverty, like, are we serious? So you want to rule out abortion by banning it and add more state bullshit when you could just feed these people or help house them. And then when you say, well, how are we going to house them? Where's the money going to come from? Well, there was 16.4 billion with a B spent on midterms. I seen this company named Icon in Austin that could print homes at 4K. One point, what is that? 400,000 homes. It says 250,000 die a year, and they spent that within this last year. God damn, we just like housed a whole lot of poverty. Like, what? That ain't gonna do shit anyway. Yeah. Well, one last thing, as far as the racist Democrats and the racist Republicans, um, I posted in the Jumbotron something because I think it's a thing people should pay attention to. Muhammad Ali said it. I don't trust anyone who's nice to me but rude to the waiter because they will treat me the same way if I were in that position. So let's go talk about Democrats and Republicans after the slaves got freed. Democrats fought to have slaves, and Republicans gave slave owners reparations. Fast forward to 2020, 21st century, Republicans. I don't know. I'm just gonna lay with that.
If we're focusing on fixing the culture and give people opportunities to start their own businesses, not all these extra regulations and all this other bullshit, then I think abortions will go away naturally under a more of a libertarian kind of government platform. Because the thing is like they don't want to do the handout thing. They don't want to do that. They do believe in giving justice where justice is due, but like I don't see them funding Planned Parenthood. I don't see them doing none of that. Because they're gonna fund a lot of things. No more wars and all this other stuff. They're gonna do some other things. And then at the end of the day, it's up to us as a culture to get the abortion culture out of our country.
Facts. Next up, we got Mayor
Wait, wait, wait,
King.
wait, 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 wait,
Uh-oh.
wait. Spike.
One to Google algorithm and Samuel Edward Conkin III, and that can be some research you can do on a rainy day. Love y'all.
Yeah, agorism. I always love when Art comes up. He always lays it down. Anyway,
Yes.
let's get to Mayor Kate. Then we got Clay, John Mark, then Sonny Johnson, and then Fred Farley. Come on up, Mayor.
Hey, you guys. Hold on a sec. All right, sorry. We've covered so much since I first put my hand up that I don't even know where to begin. But like, it's just like all of these issues that we've discussed tonight. The government and the two-party system like wants us to either focus on.
One they did that to. They did that to someone else named David Womack. Both of them had minor felonies on their record, things that had happened long in the past. And yes, they could run for Congress, they could run for president, but and there are many Republicans and Democrats who have gotten elected to local office with similar felonies on their record. Nothing was done, but once libertarians started getting elected, suddenly it was a problem. I'm sorry, Kate, I didn't mean to interrupt.
You know, people who are elected, and I've been going into these conservative, like more conservative leaning spaces lately, and being so active in the Libertarian Party, I guess I just assumed that like other parties, like the majority of their people, because like the LP is such a small world, like you know everyone. And then when I'm like, wait a minute, these people do conventions, like they have no idea how politics is even run, and like so they're having no input. Like they can yell all they want on the internet, but they're having no input if like the like they're just letting the establishment options to pick from and going from there. And we just keep doing this like the same thing over and over and over again. Like I don't know. And but earlier when I put my hand up, I was just gonna say like within the churches, like I live in rural Pennsylvania, majority white. Like I think me and my husband and my kids are like the only young couple. Family values that they all like fantasize about. You know what I'm saying? Like they'll all say like they want this that like I said, I have a felony, so that's what like that's how I was rehabilitated. Like it sure as shit wasn't the 2 years I sat in jail unsentenced, like just kill themselves and leave their young families. But that's a whole other
God
issue. Like
bless.
all of these issues are government, like, and all of the solutions that I have found within like my community and my life was not any help from the government. It was all like my community and like the church and like just I live in, like I said, I live in a small town, so it's really like this idealistic, like I know all my neighbors, like there's like 6 kids in my kid's grade, like it's a very small town. But like those are the ways that we really fix this, is like just starting at the local level and like building our communities back. Like we can't just talk about it online anymore. That's all I got.
I appreciate that, Mayor Kate. That's amazing. Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah. I mean that was beautiful. I mean, because you're right. It does start with our local communities. I mean, and we talk a lot about the local politics, which is important, but really, this liberty movement should be about building communities outside of the government, because our whole thing is that we don't want to rely on government. So if we're not going to rely on government, we need to be able to rely on each other, friends and family, and in community. I think that's what conservatism says it wants, but it doesn't. But but I digress. Let's go on to Clay.
Hey guys, this space has been great. I think he dropped out of the space, but that Clint guy, props to him for jumping into the den of vipers, because it's hard to go into a space with 150 people that disagree with you. So props to him. And on the military industrial complex point that the Mayor Kate just made, yeah, I can confirm as a veteran that the military and the government as a whole does not care about its people. They see you as a number. A good example I have from a recent experience while I was being deployed, and before we ever even made the jump overseas, a close friend of mine, his cousin died, and his aunt and uncle had a breakdown over it. His uncle ended up in prison, and they refused to grant him emergency leave to go to his cousin's funeral. And that's because the rules do state that it has to be an immediate family member. But still, we were still in a training environment, and we were going to be deployed to Kuwait, which is not even where the action is. So it was amazing to me that command couldn't take it into their discretion to grant him emergency leave. But it's because the entire system kind of just views you as an asset. Just the reason why, just look at the state of policing and prisons in America. And I like to talk about Harris County in these spaces, and I have a couple times before, because it is a great example of how big of a mess it is. And I can also make a case that the Democrats are not the lesser of two evils, as that Clint guy seemed to suggest. Because in Harris County, it's a blue county. The county judge, who is the head of the governing body, Lena Hidalgo, is also a Democrat, and the county sheriff is a Democrat. And the Harris County Jail just crossed 10,000 inmates, and the max is 10,000. So they've bussed nearly 1,000 inmates who have been bussed to private prisons, padding the pockets of private prison owners who almost certainly lobby the government. 50% of those inmates are Black Americans, even though Harris County is only 20% Black American. 80% self-report as having a mental illness, and a huge portion self-report as being homeless, and likely are unemployed as well. So they likely don't have steady employment.
And argue with that. I mean, in the cities that they run, then yeah, they might not. That might be one of several reasons why they don't want Black people armed. Plain and simple.
Yep. And if your hand's not up, if your name is not Spike or Sunny or Hotep, then really soon. If it's not a Sony, Spike, or Hotep, if you want to speak, okay, I see Fred's hands up. John, where your hand at? If you want to talk, put your hand up.
Put your hand up.
If not, I'm gonna remove you.
I'm trying.
But you're not next. But put your hand up. If you don't know how to hit a heart and then hit the little hand raise emoji.
All
So
right, here I am.
Well, wait, John, not yet. Put your hand up on the emoji thing. Because Sony hasn't spoken yet, so please, Madam, amazing, and mine.
I came in when Homeboy was talking about about the Democrats and about how Republicans wanted to. So I wanted to make that point that if you think Republicans are interested in shrinking the size of government, you have lost your damn mind. But it was made eloquently by other people before. But I'll talk to the topic at hand, and as long as it's there, they can find it and they can be profitable. Whenever that quote is said, everybody thinks about the Democrats. Like, everybody assumes they're talking about the Jesse Jacksons and the Al Sharptons of the world. When Booker T. Washington made that quote, there were no Black Democrats. Like, the Democrats were the KKK at that point. There were no Black Democrats. So the Black people he was talking about was those Black Republicans that were in that space and were operating in a way that wasn't beneficial, and that is by not solving them. So there is one way to overemphasize them, which you see Democrats doing and saying stupid shit like we can't even get an ID to vote. So there's one way in overemphasizing them. But there is a secondary, because they are given bail at such an exorbitant level that they're not able to pay. This is how Democrats are getting away with passing no bail laws across the country. It is not because they are soft on crime. It is because there is a bureaucratic problem with actually getting people fast and speedy access to trials. So it is a to solve it. But because it is not solved, the problem continues to fester. And then the only one who offers any kind of solutions are the Democrats. And instead of offering plausible solutions, they offer far off, like, okay, we're just going to eliminate the bail altogether, letting rapists and murderers and aggressors out immediately to redo their crimes, when what we're specifically looking at is non-aggressive, non-violent people that are being kept in the system for far too long because of the bureaucracy and because of the backlog, right? There's an easy and simple way to fix it. But you don't have Republicans, dare I say, you don't have libertarians even talking about it specifically at that level to say, this is the bureaucratic nightmare. You know what I'm saying? And it is not necessarily based on race, but just statistically who comes through there, race becomes a big part of the issue. And you hear a lot of conservatives, and I won't say libertarians on this because I don't hear them talking about this, but you hear a lot of conservatives talking about like what is happening to the January 6th people and how they are being detained and they're not being let go, and how, yeah, well, if you had that same concern for people like Khalif Browder in New York, then you would understand why the Black Lives Matter groups came up, why they started to gain traction. Did they abuse and misrepresent and all of that? Of course. But it does not take away from the fact that there is a real problem that needs to be solved and can be solved by simply fixing the bureaucracy that exists in these local areas in a lot of places. So that's how I look at the dualism of the two parties and how they look at race. It's one thing to look at the problems that you have created and say, okay, well, we're going to offer a different solution, even though that solution makes the problem worse, as Democrats do. But it is a completely different thing to look at these communities and say that there is no problem, that they should be grateful, that they should be happy to live in this country, even though they are under this progressive thumb of nothing but bureaucracy that puts a boot on their fucking neck, and then to only complain about that bureaucracy and about that force and use of power when they see it being exhibited amongst themselves. And I'll go back to what the other guy was talking about, where he was talking about how now the target is on young white men, and now the focus is on them, and now you're seeing that. No. Any strong Black man who stood up and wanted to be representative of his community, he was first called toxic. Before they touched any or came after any of your white boys, it was the strong Black, that idea that they wanted to be protectors and they wanted to be heads of their households and they wanted to be husbands and they wanted to be fathers. All of that was toxic in Black men way before any determination was given to white men. And if we're not going to have these conversations and include race and be honest about it, and this is not me running around talking about every white person is racist. I don't give a fuck about you. I promise you. It's not a single bone in my body that thinks you are superior to me. It has zero to do with that. It is talking about the actuality of what America did to its citizens, how it forced us into these relationships that now have to be examined truthfully, honestly, and be given quality solutions to be able to reverse engineer some of the damage that has been done. Detrimental damage, especially over decades, then there is no conversation to start, especially with us as it pertains to what they are currently doing to white America.
Awesome. I mean, I'm every time you come up as libertarian to just kind of react to some of the things you were saying.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a lot there. So I want to focus on one thing that Sunny mentioned, and I appreciate that she brought it up, and that was how the bureaucratic system is failing people and leading to cash bail and people not getting a speedy trial, and how that related to cases like Khalif Browder. For those who don't know who Khalif Browder was, I would imagine in this space, probably most people do. But for those who don't, Khalif was accused of stealing someone's, I think, backpack, and he maintained that he didn't do it. And he was in New York City, and they put him in Rikers Island, where he served for the better part of either 2 or 3 years in jail there. And Rikers Island is as bad as some maximum security prisons. He never saw a trial. Finally, it got in front of a judge years later, and he spent a tremendous amount of time in solitary confinement during that time. And finally, a judge looked at his case and said, listen, even if he had been found guilty, he would have never spent as much time in jail as he's already been there. And so they dismissed the case, unfortunately, because of the trauma that he suffered, but it's not. And the problem is that I was actually on a panel about criminal justice reform. And one of the people that was on it is a man named Joshua Williams. He is a Republican state rep in Ohio, the first black Republican in the Ohio state legislature in I forget however many years. And we talked about the cash bail system. And the problem is now the proposal is to get rid of cash bail entirely. And the problem is you replace cash bail. If you don't replace cash bail with anything other than a judge deciding whether or not you should be allowed to go on your own recognizance. Well, if only for risk aversion, a lot of judges are just going to say no to everyone. So that could end up actually backfiring and leading even more people, regardless of whether or not they can afford bail or get a bond, to be able to get out in the first place. And it doesn't address, as Sonny said, the core problem, which is that they are not adjudicating these cases fast enough. They're not getting them in front of people. And the reason for that is because of the sheer number of victimless crime laws, the war on drugs and the war on guns and the over-regulatory burdensome state that we have is leading to far too many people being accused and indicted and put on trial for things that shouldn't even be crimes to begin with. And so as a direct result of that, people who are either being falsely accused of things or had try to get out earlier, and now they have a
Sonny, I'm sorry, real quick. I'm gonna ask Spike and you, Sonny, what you think about this. 3.5 of the Libertarian platform, it says rights and discrimination. Libertarians embrace the concept that all people are born with certain inherent rights. We reject the idea that natural right can ever impose on an obligation upon others to fulfill that right. We uphold and defend the rights of every person, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or any other aspect of their identity. Government should never deny or abridge any individual's human right based upon sex, wealth, ethnicity, creed, age, national origin, personal habits, political preference, or sexual orientation. Members of private organizations retain the rights to set whether standards of their association they deem appropriate, and individuals are free to respond with boycotts and other free market solutions. Spike, do you want to elaborate real quick before we get back to Sunny? Because I wanted to add to what you were saying, because this is very, I think, necessary to bring up with the platform and the movement.
Sure, and actually, I wrote part of that platform when it was amended at our last convention in Reno last year. The part that says we uphold and defend the rights of all people, regardless of their race, color, or any other aspects of their identity, race, ethnicity, or any other aspects of their identity. And it was to help clarify what we were saying there, which is that the government should not be in the business of picking winners or losers. They have their own self-ownership, and that whatever government we tolerate should be respecting everyone's rights and autonomy equally. That's really what that says. It also says we should not be forcing people to associate or disassociate in ways that they don't wish. And that really just goes back to respecting people's individual rights and autonomy and choice to associate as they wish.
Sorry, sis. What do you think about that, Sunny?
Okay, that's fine. That's fine and good. But the whole point is you have a national history of that not being the case. So my initial point going back was, are we going to address the stuff that has been previously done, because it has to be undone? So it's not a matter of just trying to look at today from today's standard of what we wish it would be. It's about understanding what it has been. And what it has been is detrimental. So we need to start, and just to make sure that the starting point is understanding that, like, a lot of the complaints that are being made about white America now, as far as saying how America is developing a racism towards white people, has been done to Black America for decades. So if it is so detrimental for you that
Right.
Can I add to that,
And
Steffi?
not,
Because
wait.
we can't skip the past because we want to go to a future that looks like
we're addressing these things. And the thing is, like, we have Spike in here. Earlier, the Texas Mises Caucus was in here. They didn't speak, but they were here. They were in attendance. I didn't see no GOP accounts. I didn't see no Democrat accounts or nothing in these places. But it's like 11 o'clock my time, and Spike is still here. They're here to address these things. They're not saying, "Oh, this didn't happen." They're just saying, like, we're here now. We know what happened, and what can we do now moving forward? And that's why I have such a big support to certain things. I don't know if people were tagged or emailed, whatever, but they came here where I've worked my ass off for the Republican Party, the GOP, and it was not appreciated at all. And I haven't even done it much yet, anything for the Mises Caucus, Libertarian Party. But guess what? 11 o'clock on it too to show up, especially with these kind of tough situations and conversations, the hard truths to be had.
Yep, good stuff.
wait, can I didn't 5. No, chattel slavery stopped in 1865. Slavery, you could argue, didn't stop till 1965 because taxation. When you quantify what is voting done, right? So let's look at it from a pretty good number, like inequality, wealth inequality. Wealth inequality at the peak, and this is the peak. This is after Black Wall Street got bombed. People had lost their stuff, and then the height of the Depression. We were 3 to 5 times the from the black to white wealth gap. Since blacks have been able to vote, which, I should say, got out of slavery. Guess what happened with the wealth gap? It didn't, like, slightly.
that believed in, like, the Booker T way, Booker T Washington way of ownership, of economic independence, into okay, the government owes us, let's make the government pay.
No, hold on. We were forced into that.
No. See,
Sonny.
that's the whole point. We got into that, even according to the numbers you just laid out. Got into that when we were given the ability to start voting.
If that's so true, why?
That's literally what you just said.
Hold on,
in your
cut
little
me off
stated
before
facts.
I finish. To be fair, right? If what you're saying is true, they just put out a report, and anybody can Google this. Black wealth's going to hit zero. This is what the report says by 2053. But that was 2017. That was before the lockdowns and all the black-owned businesses got lost. That's also before this impending crash of the everything bubble. So let's just shave off a good 10, 20 years. We're talking about black wealth's going to hit zero in the next 10 years. How is that possible if we had so much wealth? You tell me in 50 years, black wealth is going to hit zero because we had so much money? That's not how that works. And then
what are you even talking about? After you make the switch where we go to this economy, where we allow them to take trade,
I'd be happy to be segregated again.
Because it wasn't a point of whether or not we were segregated. It's what ideology we were following. We weren't following an ideology of self-sufficiency, of building for ourselves and owning for ourselves. We were following an ideology of Lyndon Johnson and what the hell did he call that?
Great Society.
The Great Society. So we switched ideology. It wasn't a matter of saying our government segregating us was the issue that broke us.
My mom was born before that era, and that's not how she recalls it.
But hold on. It's 11:06. We're
That's all
gonna
I was
get off
about to
by
say.
11. Hold on, 11:30, and there's some people who haven't spoken yet, and other people have their hands raised. But
Yeah, I got to just like two more people, and then we can call it a night.
Oh,
yeah,
I just want to get this last point off.
at least three.
That 25% that I had mentioned of the crime that actually gets effectively squashed, right? That means there's 75%. So the question I asked, and I'll land with this question I asked to most people is, what are the odds that 75% are those who can afford it, or cops themselves, are making judgments of individuals on 25% of the data? You could basically make that data say whatever you want.
Put on white papers as opposed to looking at individual communities and judging them by their individual qualities. I am much more for that individual focus as opposed to looking at statistics on white papers. So I don't even
Democrats and the Republicans aren't the same thing. Okay, maybe I'll grant that they're not the same
Can
thing.
everybody else mute their mic?
What's that?
Can everybody else mute their mic? I'm getting you.
It's all muted. It's just that you just spoke.
They're on the same team, running the same con. There's just one of them's playing good cop, one of them's playing bad cop, and they take turns on which, what that actually means. All it is you're getting one of them's trying to destroy the country and destroy the culture and destroy wealth of all. I'm trying to understand what that means and why it's that way. But this stuff is, if people aren't, I think it makes it really convenient for people to look at it and say, well, it's not us, and it's kind of far off and distant. But like Sonny said, now that stuff is kind of coming home to roost for some people, I think it's starting to make people realize, oh shit, like this is what's been happening to y'all. You better keep your eyes open and start doing some of the work to try to help people who have been dealing with some shit for a long time and try to help find solutions. And a lot of that just starts with taking care of your own business and not farming all this stuff that we used to all do for each other and do for ourselves, farming all that stuff out to mega corporations and government agencies and things like that, and start bringing that stuff back more local and pay attention to what's going on in your local community. Because I think there's far too much focus on who's going to be president and who's not going to be president and who's going to win the nomination for one party or the other. And we talk in these 4-year cycles, when the reality of the matter is that shit hadn't meant a damn thing since the day presidential elections began. The thing that matters is the stuff that's closest to you, that has the most, the ground up. So focus on yourself, take care of your family, take care of your local community.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I agree. Definitely. Next, we got John Mark, and then we're going to close out with Fred after.
Okay, guys. Well, let me start off by saying this conversation has been enthralling. I'm going to try to wrap this up in about 3 minutes. And I'm going to start off on topic. Democrats, the KKK, and racist statism. Well, there's a direct lineage, from the Democrats, from the Confederacy, to Jim Crow era, to the, well, let's just say it's Joe Biden gave the eulogy to Strom Thurmond. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the case. And Barack Obama gave the eulogy of Robert Byrd. And doesn't that seem bizarre to you? I mean, it's wild. I was your the uncle you don't like around the Thanksgiving table and things like that. I think that's very important. And also, I think what Sonny said about like the source of the KKK, the party of the Confederacy. How do they flip that so fast? Like what did it happen like between 1962 and like 1978. Like, how did that ever happen?
Oh, it never
It's
was. JFK got shot.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But
John will say this because the KKK people don't like socialists, they don't like immigrants, they don't like Jews, they don't like blacks, they don't like Catholics, they don't like none of that. And I think that's where the flip is. Like, when the Democrats started allowing that stuff to come into their party, and therefore that's why they flipped and started trying to infiltrate the Republican Party. It was very successful in certain states, and it wasn't successful everywhere. Indiana, Illinois, like those kind of states, it was successful for them.
Well, I'll remind
no,
everybody, LBJ called the Civil Rights Bill the N-word bill. So just a
Yeah.
reminder.
well, yeah, but hey, it was his accomplishment. I don't know. No. Actually, no, it was Nixon's, I guess, right? It was Nixon's.
Well, technically it
No,
was JFK's,
but
but he got stole.
time
Right.
out. John, what are your closing thoughts in regards to Fred?
All
That
right.
you sent it
Dang.
too.
All right,
But
I'm
John,
out.
are you watching the Mises Caucus? Did you read their decentralization plan?
Decentralized revolution.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I'm also a technologist, and I'm into AI, and I'm into crypto decentralization as well. So yeah, man, hit me with a link.
Jeff, can you put the link in the comment section?
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Fred
Um,
Farley.
yeah, we got Fred, but I want to see if Spike has something to say before we get off too.
Is it
No,
me?
I
Okay.
mean it's Wednesday here, and so speaking to you from tomorrow, I'm really just hanging in because I'm a big believer in the sunk cost fallacy. I'm already here, and
It would be very easy for libertarians to get the majority.
Damn, are you breaking up? Is he breaking up on us?
Yeah, you were
Okay,
breaking up a little bit. Can you repeat what you were saying?
okay, can you hear me now?
That's
Perfect.
better.
All right. Where do these liberty, because like I said, all of these different parties are just different branches of anti-black racism. Our biggest problem is that we've dealt with anti-black racism. There's a debt that's owed specifically to non-immigrant blacks in America, descendants of American slaves. Right now, any party that is, I've never heard anybody speak, okay, well, this will be our number one issue when we get into office. If you guys vote for us, to pay off this debt that's been owed to non-immigrant blacks in America. Now, the rest of these parties, we've done.
The party's actual position might be or could be. So that answer will be coming soon. It's on my list to dig into.
And Spike, open his mic up because okay, Spike, what is your answer?
yeah, so there is no official Libertarian Party position on this. Jeff, I'm glad you brought up the Walter Block plan. I can tell you this, and this I would hope to some extent answer Fred's question. The reality is the United States government sits on assets that, depending on who you ask, are valued anywhere from 30 to 150 trillion dollars, more than enough to be able to pay off any debts that are owed, not just to the descendants of black slaves, but also to the indigenous people here as well. And I am a proponent of any kind of idea that dismantles government's ownership of assets with an eye towards either giving it back to people in the form of homesteading or with an eye towards monetary recompense of debts owed. I do not support, and I don't think you'd find another libertarian who supports having this done by putting more additional burden on taxpayers. Because it wasn't taxpayers who did it. It was the entity of the U.S. government, not just through enforcing slavery, not just through enforcing the Fugitive Slave Acts, but also through things that happen after slavery, like not allowing not allowing freed slaves to participate in the land giveaways that were happening in the Midwest, or even going in the 1950s where black people were put into housing projects in the urban inner city while white people were moved into subsidized suburbs under the Fair Housing Act. which the Democrats would not sign off on unless it explicitly said that only black people were not allowed to participate. So there's quite a few wrongs that were done to black people as a class, going even into the 1950s and 1960s, while at the same time claiming that they were working to grant equality to black people. They were simultaneously robbing them of trillions of dollars in equity and putting them in substandard housing in the inner city, imposing the welfare state on them, later imposing overcriminalization through things like the disparity in sentencing for crack and powder cocaine, Joe Biden's 1992, 1994 crime bill, the 1995 and 1996 anti-terrorism bill, which were largely, it's odd that those aren't spoken of very often, responsible as the 94 crime bill for overcriminalization of black communities. And they were ostensibly written to stop terrorism. And they have not been used for any such thing. I don't believe a single actual terrorist has ever actually been convicted on it.
That is illegal. And the government has owned most of the West. And they stopped the Homestead Act, I think, in the 70s.
Yeah, they
And
own
it's never been
650
built.
million acres.
Yep.
Yeah.
The government claims.
No one wants
Go
to be
ahead.
hungry in this country.
Of your property that is above a certain amount of feet, all the way to the atmosphere, like or the stratosphere. It's absolutely absurd what the federal government claims ownership of, especially since many of these things have an actual commodity value. The federal government claims ownership of vast amounts of reserves in the Atlantic and Pacific, totaling in, again, anywhere from the tens to hundreds of trillions of dollars of what they owe. Simultaneously, they're running up. They have so far run up $31 trillion in debt just at the national government level, and have unfunded liabilities that are as much as $200 trillion and going up. And so while they run up debts in our name, they use that debt to buy up. No problem at all with dismantling as much of that ownership as possible. And if quite a bit of that money can be used to pay off debts that have long since been owed, I think that's all the better.
And Fred, what do you think about that before we get back to Jeff?
Well, he at least said that the party didn't have no official position on it, but he thinks most libertarians would support, a reparations specifically for descendants of American slaves. I would say if they were so into equality and fairness, this is not a mystery about this debt that's owed. Seem like to me more would be up front and center and let that be the
Libertarian Party is about the individual liberty. You're still covered. Black, white, yellow, pink,
because
red, whatever.
because that's how we got put in this position. They didn't do it individually. They did it as a group.
No, exactly. But the smallest minority in America is individual. And a lot of
so many hard assets that could be used for something like this, where it doesn't have to be something where it gets kicked down the road to future generations of taxpayers or anything like that. Like, so much of the debt, like, what are we, 30 some odd $trillion in debt, plus all the unfunded liabilities that add on to the top of that. But what I would suggest is for anyone who is going to advocate for $1 trillion, where you got to walk around with a wheelbarrow to buy bread. So I would want land, hard assets, and if there's still any gold in Fort Knox or any of the other reserves, I would want some of that too. I would be going after hard assets, something that you can actually do something with, and especially land, because that's where you can actually build a future with. And any kind of paper money, no, man, they're already trying to get rid of paper currency as it is. We're about to go all CBDC, and I hope y'all are paying attention to that and getting out in front of that as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And Spike, do you have anything you want to add before you close this out?
Yes, the libertarian benediction. No, I agree with Chad. I think that land and or equity ownership of assets is the way to go, as opposed to just throwing more fiat out into the ether and then being shocked that the price of everything went up. I'm I'm happy to have been a part of this space. I told myself, that I told myself I could quit anytime I wanted to on this space, and I proved myself wrong by staying in the whole thing, well past my bedtime. But yeah, I love y'all. Thank you for being a part of this, and I'll let Jeff and Donnie close it out. But I'm glad we're having discussions like this. I'm glad that we are. For far too long, we have fallen into these traps of you have to be a Republican, you have to be a Democrat, you have to, if you're going to talk about, racism or history or, bad things that are happening now, it has to be done through the filter or the prism of how can this help my party and hurt another one, as opposed to just laying the truth bare and letting the chips fall where they may. And I'm glad that we have spaces like this, and we're not going to be able to fix things if we don't know how we got here. So I'm glad we're doing it. Love y'all. Thank you for being a part of it. Happy Wednesday for those of us on the East Coast. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday to the rest of y'all, and see you soon. Love y'all.
All right. Well, this was one of the best conversations that we have, and I appreciate everybody who came and showed up. These are not it anymore and haven't been for ages. And there has to be a better way, and I believe that there is. And we've talked about it in a lot of our spaces, and we're going to continue to talk about it. Think local. My brain is starting to shut down, so I will let Donnie close it out.
I'm gonna close out with this quote one more time. One more time. Anytime you throw